Thank you. My name is Varant Meguerditchian. I am a Senior Manager of Stakeholder Engagement and Public Affairs at Standards Australia. My role at Standards Australia is predominantly around engaging with a lot of different stakeholder interest groups, understanding their needs, requirements as it relates to standards development, and through their interactions providing a net benefit to the Australian community through standards development. Standards Australia is essentially Australia's national standards body. It's recognised by the Department of Industry, Innovation and Science as Australia's peak standards development organisation. As an organisation, we develop standards across all sectors of Australia's industry. Some 7,000 standards we have in our catalogue at this time. A great majority of them are internationally aligned or direct adoptions of international standards. We are Australia's member of the ISO and IEC, the International Organisation for Standardisation, and the International Electrotechnical Commission, for those unfamiliar with standards development. They are two of three international standards development organisations with a capital I and capital S. As we develop standards across all sectors of the Australian economy, we recognise that we also need to investigate the opportunity for development of standards in areas of interest in emerging technologies. Recently, we've undertaken some projects as they relate to data flows, Internet of Things, and more recently, through our understanding of Australian media interest, government interest and industry interest, we've identified the need for exploring whether there's an opportunity for development of blockchain standards. Blockchain, to our understanding, is something that is still completely undefined. However, there are a number of different definitions of what blockchain is. I think interestingly, a discussion around blockchain standards, one of the first things that they would be able to resolve is a definition of blockchain internationally. I think it's worthwhile running through the process of how we came to developing blockchain standards or putting a proposal to the ISO. Detecting that there was some media interest and obviously the sentiments of the Australian Treasurer around cryptocurrencies and blockchain, we had conversations with a number of different government departments, with fintech councils and various industry organisations where blockchain has been considered for adoption or use or application. Through those conversations, we ultimately determined that there was an opportunity for the development of international blockchain standards. As one of 163 members of the ISO, we put together a new work item proposal to the ISO governance organisation, the ISO's Technical Management Board, for consideration that there be a technical committee to consider the development of blockchain standards and for Australia to run the secretariat and chair that technical committee. We put the proposal in April 2016. It went to vote through the course of a 3-month period. Ultimately in September, not only was the work approved, so that there was the establishment of an international technical committee for blockchain, but rather also Australia was afforded the secretariat and the chair position for that technical committee. I might leave it there and then I'd be happy to receive questions from you.
I'm intrigued by your comment that blockchain is yet to be defined. Why are we talking about it?
I think what's important to recognise is, firstly, that Standards Australia doesn't hold any technical expertise. It would be remiss of Standards Australia to define a technology in its own right. Rather, we have an interest in it. Our understanding is that it is a distributed ledger technology. That is what our stakeholders have advised us. More importantly, we understand that the application of this technology is likely to make systems transactions more efficient, more transparent, more usable, and in many instances, cheaper for the user. For this reason, we've explored the opportunity to develop standards to provide some level of market confidence around this technology and to ensure that if it is rolled out, security measures, privacy measures, interoperability measures are in place to some extent.
And how long do you envisage the process will take to the point where you've actually achieved a standard that's accepted internationally?
I think there'll be a suite of standards. The responsibility of the Technical Committee for Blockchain is to develop standards for blockchain. That includes around the topics of terminology, privacy, security, interoperability, auditing, smart contracts or automation, if that's a better term for it. In addition to that, the Technical Committee has an opportunity to investigate use cases. So the application of blockchain technology across the fintech sector, across the finance sector, across logistics, supply chain, the movement of goods, precious stones and so forth. And in considering that wider scope of work, I would expect that there would be multiple standards. And I think that in areas where the risks associated with applying the technology are less, it is likely that those areas will start to see the use and application of the technology first.
There presumably in that process must be an enormous number of legal issues that need to be addressed by the committee, or is it purely just focusing on the technological side? You mentioned privacy.
No, look, I think you make a very good point. So it's good to put into context that standards are voluntary standards. Of the 7,000 that we have at Standards Australia, many of them are referenced by the Australian government and hence become mandated standards. And when I say many, we're talking about between 1/3 and 1/2 at any one time. So that gives some level of authority to the documents. But the manner in which they develop is consensus-based, which means that they are developed through consultations and through a consensus agreement amongst different stakeholder groups. In the instance of blockchain, that's quite a varied group of stakeholders. I would expect that things such as terminology, whilst they will be disputed, will be amongst the easiest things to define. And I would expect that the Technical Committee for ISO on blockchain will be looking to establish a 3-year work program during which they would like to achieve some of the work. Now, the first meeting of this International Technical Committee will be in the early part of 2017. After which a work program will be established, the structure of the Technical Committee, the various work streams and applications, and I guess goals around what the expectations around development of standards and the timelines will be established at the time.
Can I ask about the membership of the Technical Committee? I mean, it's fantastic you've already identified the various technicians required. Is there an identified role as a legal technician on that committee?
I certainly think that there's an opportunity for lawyers to engage in this area of interest on blockchain. I certainly think that we will be looking at anyone who may be affected by blockchain technology and how they may wish to contribute to it. The manner in which we determine the stakeholder participation is by ensuring that we have a balanced stakeholder mix on these technical committees. The technical committee invitations in Australia as yet have not been sent. However, I can assure you that the Australian Technical Committee will be formed shortly, and certainly consideration to the legal profession will be given and participation will be established to some extent.
Is there an international element to the work that's being done by this committee? Are they committee members just from Australia, or are we looking at international members as well?
So it makes a very good point, and I probably should have defined this a little bit earlier. So because Australia will be running the International Secretariat, it means that we're in a position to actually lead global efforts for the development of standards. At the same time, it's important to know that every member country of the ISO is allowed to participate on that technical committee, and the manner in which they participate is by establishing their own national committees on blockchain. Australia will do the same. So whilst we run the International Secretariat, we will have an Australian Technical Committee for blockchain. That technical committee will be tasked with developing a collective Australian viewpoint on matters around privacy, security, interoperability, and from there they will make a submission internationally. Obviously, in the position of chair and with holding the Secretariat, we should have some great opportunity to be able to shape and influence the future direction of international standards. Already we're aware that there are some 30 countries participating or observing on that technical committee. Given that the first meeting is still scheduled for April 2017, I would suggest that there'll be a great number more seeking to participate in that work.
And could I ask you to outline what the process is likely to look like over the 3-year period that you indicated?
So I think this is just a very quick snapshot of how standards are developed internationally. I think a couple of principles are important, and the first one is that they're consensus-based documents. So every country will have an opportunity to make submissions and comments around the nature of the standards themselves. Essentially how this would work is that at the first meeting there would be an allocation of the areas of interest. Individuals and countries will take responsibility for leading works on different work streams. They will put together a draft of the international standards. Those drafts will then be submitted to all of the member nations of that technical committee. They will each have an opportunity to comment and make different statements or corrections around the standard. It will then go to a vote of the technical committee, and then the documents can essentially be published thereafter. That's a very short and concise version of it, but what's important to remember is that it is developed through a process of working with all of the countries to reach an area of agreement whereby a voluntary international standard is most likely to be used if you have consensus amongst the people that are on the technical committee.
Do the legislators participate on that committee? Do the governments send representatives to sit in? Because presumably legislation will have some part to play once the standard is established.
Certainly we'll be inviting different government departments to participate in the work of standards development. Most of our consultations in relation to making the submission internationally were with government as well as with industry. We'll certainly be inviting them. To give you an example, we have some almost 400 technical committees at Standards Australia across a number of different technical fields, and on most of those we have some level of government representation.
On a scale of importance, where is blockchain so far as developing an international standard is concerned?
I don't think importance is the right way to describe it. I think blockchain is an opportunity. It's a new technology, or relatively new technology, that can be applied to a number of different areas. And certainly it has the potential to make things quicker and faster. And if we as a country would like to explore that opportunity and investigate it, then Standards Australia has created the international platform for us to be able to do that. And Australian stakeholders should consider how best they can participate in that area of interest.